What's good, homies? Welcome back to Graham. We've got to talk about Karl Jobst. Karl Jobst. I still honestly don't know the correct way to pronounce it. We got to talk about bro's response to his massive L that he took in his lawsuit against Billy Mitchell, or I should say Billy Mitchell's lawsuit against him. I covered a very summarized normie version of it in my recent video on him. Make sure you watch that before this if you're missing any context. But yeah, needless to say, the silence has been broken and Karl uploaded a video response titled I Lost. And today we're going to be breaking that down. Before we get into it, make sure you drop a like if you enjoy my content, and without any further ado, let's get right on into it. So again, one thing you got to remember is that this dude is on the hook for hundreds of thousands of dollars after this lawsuit.
On the 1st of April, I lost my lawsuit against Billy Mitchell, and the judge has ordered me to pay $350,000 in damages, plus interest.
So yeah, $350,000 plus interest, which I don't even want to know what the interest rate is on that, but that is a life-changing amount of money to owe somebody. I don't care if you're a big shot on YouTube, if you've been stacking up racks left and right, that's still incredibly detrimental, okay? Unless you got Jeff Bezos money or anything near it, that's gonna change your life drastically. So I'm not making light of this situation. Again, I just find it kind of crazy how willing Karl is to produce more content about this rather than go back to speedrunning stuff. Now, I do have to make an amendment here. When I was planning on doing this video, it was like Easter weekend, so I'm a tad bit late, but he has since uploaded a classic speedrunning video on his channel, so hopefully that's the direction he's gonna be going. But yeah, needless to say, he felt that he had to get one more word in, and let's just say even his most diehard fans are really not supporting him right now, as this apology isn't really an apology or anything. It's him really trying to gaslight the entire audience that we were wrong for thinking that the entire lawsuit was about something that he was making videos on and not about the thing that he, slyly mentions at the end of a video. We'll get into that, but let's hear his take on things.
This entire process can take up to a year or longer, so as it stands, this remains an ongoing battle, and it's not a battle I hope to give up easily. Many people are upset and angry with me as they believe I have misled them and lied to them about the nature of the lawsuit.
So that's right, the entire response video is really about this angle of everybody thinking from his videos themselves that the lawsuit was about Billy Mitchell being a video game cheater, cheating those high scores. We thought that was what the defamation case was about, when in reality, again, I'm not going to touch on this too much, it sounds like from the judge himself that the main crux of this argument was the fact that Billy felt that Karl was insinuating that the reason Apollo Legend isn't here anymore, another YouTuber, was because of previous things that Billy had done to him, including a lawsuit of his own with that guy. And the stance that Karl takes throughout this response video is just bat crazy, okay? It is gaslighting to the max. Seriously, this is like bad ex-boyfriend energy trying to get you back, completely restructuring the way that reality goes. Because I mean, if you scroll through this comment section, you will see many people saying things like, I feel like the fact that everyone thought the lawsuit was about cheating is evidence that his reputation was harmed a lot more by the cheating allegations than the details over Apollo Legend. Another user stating, I went back and rewatched all of Karl's videos about the lawsuit. In context, they all give the impression that the lawsuit was about cheating. The Apollo Legend connection was barely mentioned, which as a casual viewer of Karl and somebody who's been trying to follow this whole saga for the past, half decade, however long it's been happening, that was my take too, and it seems like that's the general consensus. We really were tricked into thinking that's what this lawsuit was about. And meanwhile, Karl spends this whole 30 minutes on his video trying to convince us that despite whatever he said in his videos, we were the ones that were taking it wrong, and simply we are in the wrong because we put two and two together.
I hope to address criticisms that I think are wrong and those that I think are right. To be clear though, I never said Billy caused Apollo's suicide, nor have I ever believed that. No one is responsible for Apollo's decision other than Apollo. If you read my words carefully, I simply laid out a sequence of events that happened one after another.
I mean, seriously, his argument is basically, guys, I didn't tell you 2 + 2 is 4, I just said the answer to 2 + 2 is more than 3, less than 5, and doesn't contain a decimal, okay? So you guys are the wrong ones for filling in the gaps there. I wasn't trying to tell you anything. And the response to this video overall shows that the entire audience was misled, okay? So whether or not you intended to mislead us, you still did over the course of all these videos that he's been making on Billy in the past 5 years.
I deliberately used words like and but to connect these events. I didn't use words like because or as a result of.
And he brings up the whole, GoFundMe for the court case here, where I strongly think less people would have donated. I mean, of course, people are going to donate money to see Billy Mitchell get owned. He's kind of a meme on the internet in that way, you know what I mean? Like, regardless, he would have got donations, but I think if he was more honest about it, people would have have realized, okay, maybe Billy has something going here with this lawsuit, or at least this part doesn't matter to me as much if he's not owning him about, cheating in games. I think less people would have donated. So is he outright scamming? Of course not. You can't make that claim. But misleading people into supporting your court case when they think it's about something entirely different is rather sketchy, in my opinion, okay? It's not like talk to a coin, rug pull level scamming your audience, but still, it is misleading and that's not cool.
This was inaccurate because the settlement terms did not involve Apollo Legend paying Billy any money. Even though this claim did turn out to be false, I believed it to be true at the time. I had been personally told there was a cash settlement, which numerous others said they were told as well, and this was also stated by multiple Reddit users, with one of them even claiming to have spoken with Apollo directly.
So then Karl goes on to start explaining his reasonings behind thinking that, this whole Apollo Legend angle was true. So first off, he really thought that Apollo Legend had to pay Billy out of court for a settlement involving their court case. And the reason he believed it's true was Twitter DMs. That's right. That was the level of research that he went into before really deciding to make this entire hate campaign. And again, I don't want you guys to think I'm coming from the angle of defending Billy Mitchell. This is seriously, like I said in the first video, one of those situations of the two people you can't stand the most fighting. So at this point, I don't care who takes the L. But regardless, I find it so funny that that was his level of research into the topic, was hearsay from people in Twitter DMs that he can't even fully verify. I mean, even this fucking Twitter DM that he shows off says, confidentially, a figure I'm being told was, and I quote, well over 10K, but that's being relayed secondhand. Like, even the guy leaking this information doesn't sound that clear. He sounds sketchy, you know what I mean? This sounds like a massive game of telephone that ended up getting this guy to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I still can't believe having to face down the barrel of that. That's just crazy. And then he goes on to reference, you can't even make this up. He goes on to reference a Reddit thread where the person is, again, saying this very cryptic stuff about Apollo Legend quitting YouTube, the sizable settlement he apparently paid, and this guy's comments are all downloaded, meaning the people in the subreddit that he's referencing this in didn't even believe this commenter's BS. Or maybe they downvoted him because he had no proof and was just spreading bullshit, and we've seen where that lands you now. So this quote proof is just hilarious to me.
Ever since this very video back in 2021, and because of the resulting lawsuit, I have always endeavored to be much more careful about what I say. And if I do say something factual, I always try to ensure that I have ample concrete evidence to support it. And during this time, Billy was suing multiple entities for telling the truth that he is a cheater. So there was no reason for me to believe that his second concerns notice regarding Apollo Legend was any more trustworthy, and I assumed it was completely bogus and an attempt to silence me, just like all of his other actions.
And what I think is really stupid and a waste of this chunk of video for Karl, I mean, he talks about this for the first third of this video, is nobody is talking or asking about why you felt the thing about Apollo Legend. They're instead thinking, why did you mislead us into thinking that this whole lawsuit was about the video game cheating aspect? That's why everybody in the comments has been so confident leading up to this, like, he's gonna slam dunk on Billy Mitchell, this is gonna be awesome, he's gonna take him for everything he's worth. When in reality, again, as we've seen from the result of the court case, Billy had a pretty damn good case against you, and it wasn't the case that you were presenting to your audience.
My standard of evidence has changed dramatically since I made this original claim, so of course now I disagree with my statement that I had very good evidence. I released a video in September 2021 titled I'm Being Sued and Cancelled, where I announced that I was officially being sued. I didn't talk about my lawsuit at all for over a year, and during this time, news outlets were posting articles about how Billy was suing me for cheating. Again, this wasn't because I said this. I wasn't even talking about my lawsuit at all. These articles were being written because reporters were reading the court documents where these issues were being argued. I felt I had no choice but to create a GoFundMe, and I advertised it in a video called Billy Mitchell Has Gone Insane and I Need Your Help. In that video, I clearly explain what is happening and why I'm creating the GoFundMe. Every single word I said in that video was true, and all of this is explained in the video. I understand that this was several years ago, so I don't blame anyone for not remembering the video or why I created the GoFundMe.
So then he spends another 5 to 10 minutes talking about how everybody else was wrong for taking his words at face value and instead should have looked into the deeper meaning, the cryptic meanings behind what he said. He's basically saying, if you took what I've been saying in my videos literally and tried to piece together the dots, whatever conclusion you come to is not what I actually meant, guys. At least it wasn't what I meant now that I know that I owe hundreds of thousands of dollars, I should say. No, I meant something different. Like, the gaslighting is just unreal. Again, I gotta go back to some of these comments because they put it so well. We have this user saying, I think this is a prime example of that. Perception is oftentimes just as important as truth, which I personally agree with. You feel that because you didn't use words such as because of you didn't actually claim that Apollo made that decision due to Billy Mitchell. But not only did some viewers walk away with that idea, but ultimately the court found that you did make that claim. And that's exactly the same thing with the GoFundMe. You feel that you never said it was only for claims of cheating, which is something that Karl says very specifically throughout this video. He's like, guys, I didn't say it was only about cheating. It's like, no, it actually was false to even insinuate that this was about the cheating aspect at all, because it didn't really sound like the judge mentioned that much at all. This seemed to be entirely about the comments made about the other YouTuber, Apollo Legend. Continuing with what this user says, he says, but the overall backlash shows that people thought it was for cheating. I'm not saying you're wrong or right, but there is a lesson to be learned to sometimes ask, how could this be perceived if released? And if released and there's a perception you hadn't realized, should you clarify that perception? Which, when it comes to clarifying, Karl actually has some excuses in that department too in this apology. Check this out.
If only I had just made a retraction, this entire thing would have been avoided. But that's just not the case. I wanted the retraction to get as many views as possible. I even said as much to my lawyers at the time. And ultimately, it did. My retraction got far more views than the original video. But it was clear from Billy, even before I made the retraction, that it wasn't going to affect his actions in any way.
So that's right, this retraction of the false information that he said, which the false information was about Apollo owing Billy money and really making the connection to, again, Apollo's terrible choice to not be with us anymore. That retraction was put at the tail end of a 30-minute video about the greatest feat in video game history, a Dark Souls no-hit run. And he's trying to tout this as if he was not trying to hide the retraction. Bro, you just claimed that you weren't trying to hide it. Why the f is it buried in the back of a 30-minute video that only people who were trying to click something entirely unrelated would ever see? That does not count as you apologizing. That to me is absolutely trying to bury the truth. Even commenters point this out. The retraction wasn't seen by, quote, 2.7 million viewers if it's on an unrelated Dark Souls video and hidden at the very end where viewer retention is at its lowest. The judge literally stated as much, so this is just another lie. That's right, the judge touched on this topic. Karl is trying to hide behind the fact that he did make a retraction. He did correct his statements. But when you go out of your way to not make a whole separate video, which that definitely warranted, that again just seems like trying to mislead your viewers. I don't know, it just feels like this guy has done some slimy stuff that, you know, might be on some moral gray area, but he really is trying to act like he's a saint and has done nothing wrong, and that's insane to try to make these claims. And you still have supporters of Karl in his comments section trying to give him advice, saying, I say this as a fan, you gotta STFU when you're in a lawsuit, especially after you lost and want to appeal, which is something Karl wants to do. And again, I feel like he's just giving more ammunition to Billy, who has clearly wiped the floor with him in court. I mean, Billy's lawyers just might be a little bit more talented than yours. Or you keep making these critical missteps thinking that, oh, YouTube's fun playland where I can just say what I want and do what I want, and it's just simply not true.
This narrative that this whole thing was only ever about Apollo Legend, which ironically is a narrative that started with Billy Mitchell, is completely false. And if that were the case, Billy would not have taken action against me on 4 separate occasions, with 3 of those having nothing to do with Apollo Legend. That is why I never thought this whole thing was actually about Apollo Legend. I had been threatened and was dealing with so many actions from Billy that were related to cheating that from my perspective, this Apollo Legend lawsuit was just Billy trying to capitalize on a mistake I made.
And there's a weird part of the video where maybe I'm just dumb and misinterpreting this, but it sounds like Karl is trying to give us the idea that even he was confused and dumbfounded during parts of this trial when he was like, I had no clue, thinking it could be about Apollo Legend. I thought this was 100% about the cheating in video game stuff because I already made my retraction that 2.7 million people watched. Well, I mean, I guess if you look at the analytics, only 100,000 people stayed to the very last minute of that 30-minute video, but I'll still say almost 3 million people saw my retraction, so how could he sue? Like, bro, you are not a sweet summer child, okay? You've been around the block a few times. You can understand why they're making these claims and why they sued you. Just this fake ignorance and innocence that he's trying to give off throughout this whole video is really toxic to me, and it's really bled through to the viewers as well, who make these very poignant comments. The best being from this user here who says, you know, Karl, there are a lot of things I could say, but I think the most concise way to put it is this. If this were someone else, and this is the video they made, you would be dunking on them for it, which is absolutely true. Karl would have ripped his own response to shreds had it not been coming from his own mouth. So I guess the moral of the story is, if you clearly misconstrued his words and took them for face value like you were supposed to, which is just not the play, guys. You gotta read under the multiple layers of irony and metaphors that he was speaking in, okay? He was speaking in a way that the simpletons out there, they took his word for face value and donated thousands of dollars to his GoFundMe. But if you were a true fan, you'd know that he just was trying to keep the truth from us, protect us, okay? I don't know what kind of angle he's trying to take with this, but regardless, this was one of the saddest responses to losing a lawsuit that I've ever seen. I mean, it's kind of like doubling, I would say this is doubling down. So I guess good luck to Karl for trying to appeal this. Let me know what you thought down in the comments below. This is probably the last video I'll make on this topic, but it's just funny to see, YouTubers try to react to drama that they're in. Sometimes they navigate it well. Other times, like this situation, in my opinion, they fumble the bag completely. Catch you guys in the next video. Until next time, peace out.